Welcome to the show, everybody. We are back on the BDSM live show where we're talking about budgeting, diversification, savings, and money management. Just before we kick off, if you guys can hear me, or well, as I'm kicking off, just type in yes into the chat and we can go from there. But as I've been mentioning every week, this is part of our exciting B project. If anyone wants to go to b.com.au, you will see a Comic Sans version of a B and nothing on it. But soon that will be heaps of cool information on there. And I'm going to be talking about it every single week. My name is Ivan, and considering that more and more of you are tuning in every week, especially on the replays because our timing's a bit weird, I can only expect that you're still interested in all things BDSM. Just a reminder that all topics today that we discuss are general only, and if you do need more in-depth guidance, you should chat to a professional. However, luckily, today, we have a professional that you can probably ask. Choosing the right stocks isn't always easy, so where do we start? Today's guest is Conrad Song, founder of Maqro Capital. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to actually see you again in the flesh, other than on TV. So I met Conrad at the start of this year, just when I started, I guess, took the helm at open markets. And Conrad's Maqro Securities are a really good client of the group. I remember we sort of caught up. I immediately recognized that this is one smart kid, someone who is well beyond his years. Today, he's driven to build the #1 shop in Australia. And over the last 4 years, I believe you've been working at Maqro, or creating Maqro, and the overall goal is to level the playing field for investors at any stage and break down the bridges between retail and institutional investors. Your background is across brokerage, private equity, managed funds, and you're definitely the right man for the job. So, hey, tell me, how did you get started? Let's start with that. Let's start at the start.
That's great. It brings me back. Not that I've had too many years on this planet yet, but it all started. I started off in probably grade 10 on Investopedia, and I was thinking, how do I get into this money business?
Kids.
Yeah,
Investopedia, Jesus.
Investopedia, and the worst part about Investopedia is that it's a very good example of the sheer amount of content that exists on anything finance. And, I remember being a kid being like, this is just too much. It's just way too much. But sort of had an interest in everything trading platforms. That was a big thing. I think when you're young and you look at the industry, especially sort of the funds management industry, you see the charts, you see the screens, you see some guy in his home office and all the multi-layers and things like that. And you go, that I could do that. And so it started kind of in that in that sort of really naive form. My old man was in business. He has ups and downs as any businessman would. And I remember kind of thinking, well, I want to go into business. Why not the business of money? And so that was kind of where it all started. And, it became a passion of mine. Funnily enough, just to really bring it all the way back, I attended a high school called Queensland Academy for Health Sciences. So my background in terms of high school was in medicine. And so, having Korean parents, it's not far-fetched to receive the suggestion that, hey, medicine's a good way to go. Or the alternative, which I took, was law. And so what ended up happening was I went through. Yeah, so I studied law for 3 years.
Sorry, I thought you said war. Like the alternative is I'm going to go and start dropping bombs on country. Trump.
That's on the finance industry. I'm dropping bombs and disruption. I went to Griffith Uni and studied law. And as you kind of do when you're in that sort of university stage, you started asking yourself the question, what is it that I really want to do? What am I passionate about? I had the pretty sort of fortunate, opportunity to work with the old man on some private equity deals that he was involved in. So he had some exposure in, all the way to Laos, agricultural farms in Laos, where I visited at a ripe age of 19 and sort of walking around and controlling the property and going, okay, so this is private equity is you get your hands dirty. And so I really liked that idea. And And it basically led me to an internship over in Singapore, and in this private equity firm that was involved with my old man's dealings. And from there, as any young kid would, that I saw the bright lights of finance, and it was enough for me to make the move from law after, and law is no easy endeavor when it comes to union. So I made the switch,
especially when you have the attention to detail like I do.
Yeah, it can
got to do something else.
Yeah, it can get really, really intense. But I think one of the good things that, look, a side note I took away from law is that critical analysis, and I use that everywhere. You pros, cons, conclude, and so I've noticed that to be adaptive, or adaptable to everything I'm doing now. But so I then moved to Sydney as I was changing my degree, and so I attended the University of Sydney, economics and finance. And funny enough, again, kind of as any sort of young, ambitious kid would, I said, well, I don't want to wait till uni finishes. I want to do something now. And so I ended up getting a job.
Can I just tell you, it's not every kid that does that. I think it's probably weird kids like you and I, but, although actually I did finish. my mum said she'd kick me out of the house.
So I got a job at a company called Money Me. Before I did that, and this is actually probably important to know, I tried to start a Bitcoin trading platform. Now, this is back in the day, and I kid you not, I was in front of a computer screen with, I think it was at the time, it wasn't Mt. Gox, fortunately enough, but it was might have been Coinbase, one of the platforms that provide the Bitcoin transactions. And I said, and I think it was trading like $100, something silly. Yeah. And I said, well, if I'm going to be in the business of Bitcoin, I'm going to have a lot of opportunities to buy this. I don't have to, put the capital that I used to start this business into Bitcoin. Worst decision in my life, right? I ended up building that business, or trying to get it off the ground, using uni students. And I'll tell you how it worked. So it'll give you a bit of an indication of what I've gone through. So I was studying economics and finance, and then I said, okay, I want to get into finance, but Bitcoin. Okay, so I need to build something. I need a platform. Well, I can't build anything. I don't know the first thing about coding. Or maybe I join, and the subject was computer science 101. And so I joined that subject as an elective, and I go in, and the only thing I'm thinking about is who can I have, join, as founders of this company. And I managed to find, two really good, guys who, were passionate about this kind of thing, building, and, as you find in this area, you're a classic example, Ivan. You get your hands dirty in the coding, and you lose it, right? You dive straight into it.
I definitely don't do that anymore. My guys have literally banned me from ever touching code again. Like, we have a whole team of people fixing up the shit that I did.
That's the idea, right? At the time, I had no resources. I had to, explain to these guys that, I had some type of plan, which I didn't. And eventually what happened was, the business didn't go as planned, for a couple of reasons. And one of those was infrastructure. And, it links really well to, what I've got sort of set up with Maqro and with Open Markets Group now, because, all the opportunities that I think I've been able to develop on were based on the foundation of infrastructure. Whether that be, starting off with some clients, whether that be starting off with a really generic platform, or a network to be able to source, trading execution platform, or platforms. And so anyways, I guess going back to my experience of how it all began, after the failure of that Bitcoin business, I then said, okay, you know what? I kind of have my partner working, and studying uni, whilst I'm trying to make the big bucks and just failing to do so. There's a lot of risk and the stress of trying to start something. You know this, more than I do. And I guess what happened was I got a job, and it was a company called Money Me. They're listed now. They were doing some great things when I was there, and I can see why they've had so much success. But I quite quickly moved out of there because lending wasn't my game. It was always in the stock market, anything related to the stock market. Now, at the time, I didn't know what, and so I took up a job as a stockbroker. You start off in sales and you sort of work your way up. And I did that in Sydney. And over the course of me sort of working for this business, managed to build a lot of sort of skills that I feel have been sort of paramount to what I've tried to do. And then we started so then I went to a funds management company, started Maqro after that. And so it was actually called Trader Note. So it was called Trader Note because we thought, hey, let's just send out, trading signals. Let's just keep it really basic. But then as it evolved, and this is what I guess a proper infrastructure can provide, you can go anywhere. And I think that was the biggest key to me being able to pivot towards the right sort of area. And now I look at what we have, which is, really a comprehensive sort of suite where, thanks to the partnership that we have with Open Markets, a really powerful trading platform.
It's just like I think this is almost like an ad for Open Markets. We had to talk about you, Conrad.
But it's been, I think, for us a way that we've entered the trading game without having to build our own trading platform, which it can cost millions of dollars, right? And so we did that. Yeah. And then but the focus was always research and advice. And what we've been able to do is provide more of a holistic offering, including corporate finance transactions, which we successfully listed our first company as lead manager, Pan Asia Metals.
Congrats.
And a whole bunch of other stuff which we're continuing to roll out, but it all started on Investopedia, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's crazy. Man, back in my days, I didn't have Investopedia. It's interesting. I also had a small business that I started. I started a couple of businesses. The first one was Computer Doctors, which was meant to help people with computers when I was like 14 or something. And I remember I got one call, and so I stood up at night. I got up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, plastered the entire suburb in these Computer Doctor notices. Like, okay, cool, got back. My dad's like, hey, guess what? We're going to Optus for changing our numbers. I'm like, all right. Because back in those days, when you went to a different plan, you couldn't put your number.
Yeah.
And so I got one call on the way on the car, and it was Dan Murphy's calling me saying, hey, there's a big sign on top of this. You can't, post your ads.
Not a sales call, just a complaint.
Not a sales call. So it was a complaint. Said, yeah, look, we'll see you. So that was my first. And anyway, then I did vanilla.
I think when you look back on those things, though, when at that time you're so desperate. You're thinking, how do I get this off the ground? Heck, what do I do? I want to do business. I want to be entrepreneurial, but what is it that I do? And I feel like it's the times now when we have to go, damn, I'm way beyond where I was not so long ago. I better put the work in because there's an opportunity. And so no, it's good to talk about it.
Yeah. Look, 100%. And the other thing is that because you've had those experiences, like your crypto experience, and that failed. It's ultimately what sets up the platform. And I think I'm of the view that every entrepreneurial human being, especially male, has to blow up at least once in their life to the point where it just completely gets them to think.
I think it's so interesting because failure. So again, to bring my old man in, who I've, like any son, look up to. But the old man said, if I recall correctly, he was in a bit of a pickle in terms of his business. I was a very young kid, and he goes, out of his real difficulty to sort of bear through the situation, he looks at me and goes, I remember it to this day, he goes, don't do business. He goes, don't do it. It's not worth it. The stress is just too much. And I said, no, I'm going to do it. And then eventually he changed his narrative to just don't fail them. And I remember thinking, well, that's a pretty weird way to give advice to a kid about business. But then,
especially when you're going into business,
yeah, exactly. And then
chances are you'll fail.
Well, that's right. And then he brought it up a little bit after again. We always spoke about it. And he said, look, you will fail. I said, oh, that's not what you said. He said, no, you will fail, but do everything you can not to. And I think the problem with some people is that, you understand that, hey, failure is part of the equation. Great. That's important. That's what we have. It's like, okay, it's the reality of life. If you get away with it and you don't fail, fantastic. You're Zuckerberg. But, he's gone through his failures too. But unless you're an outlier, you're going to experience some type of hurdle, which is going to feel like failure. But still, do everything you can to prevent it. The risk management. It's the same thing with trading. It's like, hey, I know my approach is going to have a trade that doesn't go my way. Don't have a strategy that's going to be okay. Then I'm going to lose. I don't know. I think that's very misconstrued nowadays, where people go, okay, well, if I can fail, then it's okay. But I think the idea is to learn when you do, or if you do.
And realize that you're failing.
Yeah,
that's probably the hardest part.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So in typical entrepreneurial fashion, you started Maqro 4 years ago. You hired an amazing team around you. Rob, who's very well known in the space, is the CEO of that space. So you brought in some grey hairs, or lack thereof, whatever. And so he's obviously been helping you on that journey. And I've over the last year I've seen you do a couple of different things. Obviously, you ran lead on a corporate deal, which is no small feat. You've are about to launch Maqro Trader, which is quite an exciting platform. Looks quite familiar. And so what's next for you? I mean, how are you growing to the next level?
Yeah, without sounding like too much of a pitch. No, we've worked very, very hard, and it's funny you bring Rob up, because Rob's a classic example of why this business has a shot at disrupting such an intense, concentrated, competitive market. And just to give you a bit of insight into Rob, so Rob has his experience in Westpac broking and other firms, and he actually worked the firm that I used to work for, and he was my boss. And so how it used to work was you had your head of desk, and then you had your dealer's assistant, who kind of was the assistant for the deal. So, and so I was sitting there placing the trades for Rob, conducting, the nitty gritty research that, was above, below his pay grade. And I remember when, I started this thinking, I need this guy. And when the opportunity came, we sat down and had a chat, and we spoke for hours on end about, what it is that we're trying to achieve. And it takes, and I've experienced this myself personally, because I'm quite young, especially in this industry where, Ivan, I'm sure you experience it too. There's guys with, years and years on us. And just, let's say, just the age component, right?
Doesn't make them more knowledgeable.
That's right. And I think, what was really refreshing was, I guess, to see someone's character like Rob to go, hey, you used to work for me, but I'm now going to work for you. And it was that vote of confidence in not me, but the vision as well. And that says a lot about everybody else. Everybody else that's joined us, I didn't have a working relationship with them in the past. The reason why they've stayed, and the reason why they've sort of contributed to such an exciting business that's really growing and taking off, I think, is that vision. And so I guess to sort of start with where we are, and then sort of lead on to where we're going. We have, again, so the platform and the foundations there. We've done a lot of work in building and establishing these revenue streams for the business, whether it be through the trading platform, on brokerage, whether it be through our research subscription, or whether it be through corporate finance opportunities. What we've done is we've established these business models within the group, and from here, it's just a matter of turning on the marketing. We've done our own internal marketing and we try our best to do what we can, but we understand that, hey, there's no point in showing everyone something that's not 100% ready yet. If anything, it's a disaster. You go out live and, first 10 reviews are all 1 star. It's a big hit to your business. And so what we did was we focused a lot on getting it ready. We went through a lot of other sort of providers, Comsec and other firms before landing with Open Markets, just to show an example of the stuff that we had to do to get it right. We're working on things to improve, our platform offering as well through you guys. The same thing with the research, same thing with corporate finance. And it's finally gotten to that point where we say, okay, let's stabilize it. And let's open up the floodgates to then allow the business model to play out, because we know that $1 of marketing spend results in, X% of, conversion, and how that results into revenue. Now that we've validated that process over the last 4 years, and have improved it, you were talking with Superhero on this podcast webinar not too long ago, and I love what they've done. I think they sit in the same AFSL provider as we do, Sandland Private Wealth, and so they're, from my point of view, I think they had an article written on them from the Financial Standard, and the Financial Standard plugged us in. So I love that they're doing well. They're doing something similar, but in a much more niche way, which allows me to sort of say, hey, you're competitors, but I like what you do. So, they made, I think they picked up 10,000, based on this article I read, 10,000 new clients or new users in 3 weeks. From my point of view, and I saw the ad, it was a great ad. I think it had a nice pun, like, wait a Comsec, why are you paying, for $19.95? And it was really, really, really good. And it targeted that market perfectly. And I can see why it did well. The marketing streams that we have access to us now, whether it's social media, whether it's, any exposure that, we have on, let's say, Ozbiz TV, which is a growing streaming online service, it's there. It just costs some money. And so if we can confidently say that the cost of acquiring a client and the revenues that will be generated from that is going to allow us to be in a profitable state, that why aren't we going? And so, yeah, really what we're doing now is, it's Maqro 2.0 in the sense that, we want everyone to know who we are. I think up until now, we've tried to keep a lid on it. We didn't want to grow too aggressively. Heck, we didn't have the operational capacity to take on the clients. And this is the exact problem that I feel that we're trying to fix, which is advisory firms, whether they're old school or they're up and coming, they understand that there's a limitation or restriction on how many clients they can manage because of the limited resources that anyone has. And what we've tried to do is build this platform that allows a business, an advisor, to communicate to all of their clients at once, provide the general advice that they want at the same time, very, very efficiently, so that not only can they grow their business more and be able to manage more clients like we are experiencing, but also so the client gets a better service. And, we have clients that range from having, $5,000 in their portfolio to, 5 million, right? It's a vast range, and any advisor, I don't care if they're smart, dumb, young or old, they're profit maximizers. Whether it's for the client or themselves, we live in a society where we're all profit maximizers. So expecting the advice to call the smallest client first doesn't make sense. You're asking him to have less food on the table for his kids, when he comes back home. And so we said, okay, well, let's not change, let's not hate the player. Let's change the game a little bit. And let's create a platform that allows the advisors the ability to communicate their message and advice across everyone. But the first thing that we need to do is we need to validate it to ourselves and grow our business ourselves, which we're seeing a lot of success. And we've already had a few businesses sort of engage with us and say, look, they're very interested when the sort of platform is available in terms of the research side, so that they can use. And so, yeah, I guess at the moment, we're doing everything we can to stabilize and optimize our operations, provide the proof using our business that this platform works, and then sell it. So the platform, not the business.
So tell me a little bit about it. So that's quite interesting. I remember, the first time we met, I was, the first thing you immediately said, hey, look, how do we do something together whereby, we can help, sort of build out that platform and do this, which I thought was a refreshing conversation, because typically, you come into a full service place and, you get to talk about, how do we get the advisor more high net worth clients? But you're coming in from the other side, which is, let's make it accessible for everyone. So where are you at with that? I mean, are you getting close to the development of that platform? Are you looking at external capital? Are you going to, look at growing this to the next level? I mean, obviously you've already got quite a large team around you. How does it look?
Yeah, so the platform currently exists, and it's great. We've worked on this for quite some time. Like any platform, there's going to be improvement. Heck, we expect there to be improvement, all the time. That's how these platforms survive. And so what we did was, I guess the idea for us is that, the platform exists, and for us to provide this sort of, it's interesting because it is actually difficult to define, because it kind of doesn't exist, or it's fragmented. You've got some people that's, robo advisory, and then there's a whole different range of product suites for that, whether it's an MDA product or, something where they just execute themselves. And so I guess to answer your question, we've got what we believe to be a product that is working for us. What we now need to do is, we're generating revenues from this, quite aggressively. We're seeing, a tremendous amount of growth, not only in the number of clients that come on board, but as a result of this platform, the number of clients who are more open to working with us on the execution side of things, which is, thanks to yours truly, we now have a separate revenue stream for. So it really comes.
Conrad is not paid to drop in the occasional open markets.
Oh, is it not? I didn't get that memo. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
No, so
that's but from now on, they stop.
Yeah, no, but I think it is very important. It's very important because for us, we need to be able to provide the client with everything, and we've worked on that, including having that platform available. But the research side, and it's called the Maqro Search Portal, which, as a plugin, jump to the website and, have a trial and demo of it. But this platform
Maqro.com.au, I believe.
That's the Maqro.com.au.
For anyone who is going to listen on this on the podcast, MAQ, it's a cool name, by the way. I like it. It's
thanks. We did a brainstorm. So, like I said, we would trade a note, and then we were wanting to change, and we did a brainstorm. I brought all the employees in, and I said, "Hey guys, let's do this. Let's brainstorm." And I swear to God, it was me who came up with the idea. And
of course it is. Even if it
next
wasn't.
week, yeah, and it's like the movie. And the next week, the guy goes, "Hey, that was, you do know, I suggested it." And I was like, well, "Sure." So I went. Anyways, so it's a great name, Maqro. We believe that we have the product to the point where it provides that value, where the client can experience the service where they're not neglected. If you look at the market at the moment, there's so many metrics you can look at it through, whether it's age, net worth. But if you take a look at the way they've set up their research or execution plan or setup, you've got, let's say, completely self-directed people who are like, "Hey, I don't trust anyone. I do this all myself. Discount brokerage, cost me $5 a trade. Get out of here." Okay, makes sense. Sure.
Only with some providers. Come on, that's a good right? It's 1995 at ComSec.
That's right.
Open traded a company. We what?
And then on the complete other spectrum, you have completely discretionary products, MDAs, funds management, products that people use to just get instant diversification or whatever they want. And so the market that we were initially set out to target was the investors that, sure, they want to execute and have some type of control over what they're buying and know what they're buying. A fund can say they've made 10% return, but, bar, let's say, the top 10 holdings, you're probably not getting too much insight on what's going on a month-to-month basis. And so you got the investors who want to do things themselves, but they need help. And the problem is these investors who want to do things themselves, who are trading on very low brokerage rates, there's this massive market that exists where these guys are not big enough for traditional advisory firms. And so these traditional advisory firms, as we discussed, have that problem where they can't manage everyone. We believe we've actually provided that already for our existing clients. And we've done everything we can to sort of try to ensure that principle of, hey, everyone's a fair client. I don't care if you're, worth $100 million. As far as your membership goes with us, and it's almost shooting us in the foot, but it's like, you're a number, not a number, but you're the same as the other person in the fairest way possible.
I think actually, to be fair, I think that part is really important. I've always been of the view that, and as I'm learning more and more about the participants in the space, like my background is, I was a full-time trader. I was 120, 150 trades a day. So for me, like the whole conversation is, why would you go passive? Has always been something that's kind of, but as I've understood the general, the participants in the market who makes up the retail space, I'm more and more of the view that getting the right advice and actionable insights is so applicable. And you've got the situation where you have so many different research providers providing pages and pages of stuff, which is so difficult to consume. It's written in language which protects them ultimately legally. And sometimes, like a lot of, say, Morningstar reports, they're just words. It's just content. It's like reading, like a fifth-tier journalist reporting on what's happening in the news. And so I think that having, and this is where I really hope that this that you get that the next stage, and for anyone who's on that journey as an investor with you, that's going to be a mind-blowing experience once you reach scale, because there is so much value, and people in Australia will pay for good advice. And if you've got a capability where it's scalable and you've got all these one thing that you've definitely done well is brought in a lot of these really top tier people, being able to then go in and reach, push that and distribute that. The execution part going to zero over a long period of time. Advice, good advice that saves you, $10,000 on a bad decision. That actually makes you money is irreplaceable. I love the concept.
Yeah, it's such a good point as well. Like the advice industry is, it's under a lot of scrutiny. That's why the opportunity existed for us. I worked in a company where I felt as though things could be better. And, it wasn't that specific company itself, but I thought just the industry in general was, from my point of view, conflicted. Here you've got this advisor who all he cares about is the volume of trades the client makes. So his advice is naturally linked towards prompting action. And, there's movies about this, and we've seen it and whatever. And the idea is that, hey, well, that means that people are starting to catch on, and they're going to look for alternatives. And we're seeing that that's what the fintech space is really catering to, whether it's self-directed trading to say, hey, you know what, screw them all, do it yourself. Or whether it's, hey, here's a firm that does, MDA products, stocks was a great example, really transparent, scalable sort of business that allows people to just invest. Spaceship's another one. And, you've got these companies that have sort of said, hey, where are the guys that are just fed up with the traditional model of advice? Because we're offering what you need. And, it comes to the ability to not neglect. It's an ability. It's a firm's ability to not neglect. And that comes from an operational efficiency point of view, but also from how the conflict of interest is managed. For us, it's fairly simple. It's like, sure, you can open up a trading account with us, and execute a trade and get us to execute a trade for you as well. There's advisor-assisted trades. We still have advisors that do get on the phone and have a conversation with you and provide you with that full service package. But alternatively, we have a research portal that pretty much does the exact same thing, maybe less. What's the word? I wouldn't say personal advice, but less, of a relationship that you get to build with someone real.
A little bit more catered.
Yeah, but we say it all the time. You're not in the market to make friends. You're in the market to make money. And if you're getting something from a platform that, sure, I can't give you a joke and build a bit of rapport with you and send you out a Christmas card once a year, but it's going to give you extremely objective advice that's not based on who you are, how many trades we think you should place, how much money we think you have. With our business model is based on subscription. So you pay for a year, and we're looking at adjusting this to a monthly to make the barrier to entry a lot lower. That's kind of in line with our marketing strategy of opening up the floodgates, right? But if we offer to the client a membership package, it's like, hey, continue to trade with ComSec. I insist, because we as a business make enough money from the objective and mass advice that we give to everyone that's unbiased. It's not, preferring somebody else based on how much money they have. You're getting the same thing as the guy who has $10 million every trade that he places. And so, that's created sort of that advice offering. But I guess also just to sort of point out, the advice business is so interesting, because you get people who go and they expect you to predict the future, right? And this is where I think Morningstar, all these businesses, why they result or defer to massive amounts of content rather than having any sort of actionable advice. I'm not saying Morningstar don't provide that, but a lot of their offerings. I'll go on the record. But there are definitely these businesses that exist that are content heavy. I mean, in an online business world, it makes sense because their SEO and the digital marketing, the traffic that comes from all that content to the website is massive. So it makes sense strategically as a business. But when it comes to the end clients, like, what are they actually getting? And you get a few different clients that come in the door with Maqro. One's the guy who says, hey, or the lady who says, hey, tell me what to do. I don't care, or I don't know. That's your job. That's why I'm working with you. And then you have the other guy and lady who says, hey, I'm actually really passionate about this and I make my own decision. But I know I need more help because, one, I've got a day job, right? Two, you guys have all the resources. And three, I need someone to have another set of eyes on my portfolio to give me the confirmation of my decision. And look out for the things that I don't know about. And then finally, you have these guys, and they're different characters, but you have these guys who say, if you don't make me money, if you lose me money, I'm canceling my service. And now I get that. I understand where they're coming from. They work with a professional. They expect professional results. What people don't understand is that professional results also incur losses. And the problem with advice, or not the problem, but one of the issues of the advice business is that it's every piece of advice that gets judged. It's not like a fund where every single trade, it kind of forms one little figure, 15% per annum. When it comes to the advice model, when you're giving recommendations and actionable sort of tips, right, is what they call it in the industry. It's like you get one wrong and it's like, heck, that might be the first recommendation you provide to the client as soon as it comes on board.
Doesn't matter if it's the 15th, that's the one that'll get picked on.
That's it. And so, there's a lot that you're working with. And I think the biggest thing is understanding clients, understanding the users. And that's why what we've done is we've made a product or a service that it really has all the avenues. So, for example, the research side, we have an investing report or investing portal. This is all on the online platform. Trading, so shorter term stuff. So investing medium to long term, mid cap to blue chips, dividend heavy. A lot of the retirees like this. Small cap, so a trading report, which is much more active. Equities trading, short term swing trading, momentum trading, you name it. And then we've got the small caps report, which is more of your higher risk, higher reward types of investments. That could be, getting into PAM, let's say once it lists, we'll recommend the stock, but which we can't actually do. But anyway, that's a side point. And then
it's all general advice here. It's fine.
Yeah, and then the ETF report, which we actually just launched not long ago, and we're excited about that. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is that there's something for everybody. Every client's different. Some client might say, hey, you know what, Conrad, I need to work with an advisor who is going to put his neck on the line. So when he gives me a recommendation, it's just going to be a lot more, let's say, conviction behind it. All the other ones I don't want to hear about. And maybe that's a client that needs to speak with an advisor one-on-one. And then you got the clients who are like, okay, I want to use this as a third-party platform to base my own primary research on. And so, yeah, I really think that the product that we've created is so holistic that allows us to work with the client in whichever way they want, whether it's trade yourself or get us to trade, whether it's long-term or short-term, whether it's corporate finance opportunities or just an MDA product or, a discretionary product, which we're working on now. We've got it. And so, yeah, to answer your question about the advice model, I think it's got a lot of problems, but I think we're positioned in a really good way to cater to that problem.
Yeah, and potentially solve it. So for anybody who does want to check out the Maqro platform, maqro.com.au, or type in yes, and so we'll get your name over to the guys at Maqro to go in and check it out. For anyone who's a believer in the journey, a little bit like me, of where I think what Maqro is actually capable of, and is interested in potentially becoming an investor. I'm assuming that all of your investors at the moment are 708 only.
So just to touch on that, we're doing, and I think you're referring to the capital raise that we're lining up.
I've heard on the grapevines.
Yeah, and which is great. We're getting a lot of it's a lot of buzz on it, and so we've partnered up with Venture Crowd. They do, they offer these types of transactions to their clients. We've managed to partner up with them for our raising, and so we're looking to raise $1 million to really take this to, like I said, Maqro 2.0. So
cool. And so is that sort of like is Venture Crowd a bit of like a crowdfunding type?
No, so I mean that's part of their business strategy, but this particular raise is a wholesale raise. Yep. And hopefully the last one that we do before we really sort of traject towards the IPO listing, just like we sort of took PAM to the ASX, where we're hoping to do that for ourselves as well. So
yeah, gotcha. Don't ever say the last raise, because you never know. In a couple of years, you might be profitable and go, you know what, I need to do a massive raise to go on and take out the market. If you're interested in investing or have a conversation about that with Conrad, type in invest for 708 investors. Conrad, thanks so much for coming onto the show. We did run a little bit over, as we have every single week, because probably I fit in way too many stories about myself, which I shouldn't. But thank you so much for making the time to come along, especially on short days. We hope to get you back. I have actually got about 10 questions for you that I had pre-prepared, of which I asked 0. We're gonna have to get you back. I think we're pretty full for the end of this year, but early in the new year, get you on and ask you more about it. By that stage, I'm assuming your raise will be done. So be interested to. By that stage, a lot more people will know about Maqro, I would think.
Yeah, well, that's right. Very, very keen. Very keen. Thanks for having me.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Conrad. Catch you soon.
No worries.